The PICER Institute wishes to share an introduction to our research and findings into the COVID-19 caused by the SARS coronavirus 2. In the coming weeks, we will offer a 1.5-hour online seminar with much more detail in order to help people understand the current pandemic more thoroughly. The novel coronavirus surfaced in China during the Chinese New Year at the start of 2020 and has since then been spreading around the globe and has been deeply affecting people all over the world. A lot of people have asked PICER's view on the outbreak, so we are happy to share our latest findings. Our study may differ from conventional science as our approach looks into the interface between consciousness and matter and helping us to better understand the workings behind this physical world. The scientific community has an ongoing debate to classify viruses as living or non-living, even though viruses do have genetic material and are now recognized to even possibly be an important part of the evolution of life. Scientists would usually determine that a life form must fulfill a set of criteria, and because of this, viruses do not meet these criteria as they do not metabolize. However, after more than 20 years of research into the mechanics behind life, we found that even elements have consciousness, and that viruses themselves have a very basic consciousness. We can begin by sharing our understanding of what is consciousness. Consciousness is generated when there is a reaction to stimulus. Once something is sensed or felt, there would be an awareness of it, hence generating consciousness. For instance, having an emotion is a form of consciousness. Having perception is a form of consciousness. So how do we understand awareness or perception? Well, we found that when there is perception, there would also be a preference and a judgment of what is good and what is bad. For example, what makes us scared is bad, what makes us feel happy is good. It is such preferences that would then help to generate emotions, hence generating consciousness. To explain more about life forms and their metabolism. Through our study of consciousness, we have found that living organisms have much more complex consciousness than so-called non-living organisms. And as mentioned earlier, it is widely believed that one of the basic criteria for life is for it to have metabolism. Metabolism is when a raw material, such as food, is turned into energy, which would then allow the life form to support its basic life. A virus, however, is not as complex as it does not metabolize and can also survive on a small amount of energy. The only time a virus would need to use energy is once it is inside a host, as it needs to replicate itself. Apart from this process, a virus remains dormant and can survive without any sunlight, air, or water. The program of a virus's primary intention. Our research has led us to understand that any conscious being, whether it be a virus or any life form, needs to achieve its primary intention. Studies have found that viruses have relatively simple genetic information stored in their RNA and DNA, meaning that their consciousness is quite simple in nature, and it seems that the thinking of a virus is basically to do with its need to survive, which it accomplishes by finding hosts to help it replicate. This seems to be the program of a virus. Let's now look at the characteristics of viruses. Through our research, it appears that all viruses seem to share common forms of consciousness, or, in other words, common characteristics, one of them being that they are inherently extreme. Viruses are extreme in the sense of being very determined, even adamant about striving for their survival. Actually, survival is their primary objective, which is why they continually spread, colonize, and replicate their respective species. Now, in order for them to replicate, they need to copy their genetic material, and this need causes them to blindly and continuously replicate, leading to another common character trait, that of greed. The greed is to survive at all costs by replicating themselves, to the extent of appearing as though they want to dominate. This also plays into another objective, which would be to strengthen and reinforce their collective consciousness. What differentiates one virus from another is that they have different genetic information, meaning different character traits that represent the different kinds of collective consciousness. How does the virus work? First, it needs to look for a host, which is quite an interesting process. Viruses need to find life forms which are more complex than themselves, such as humans or animals, in order to be able to replicate. Did you know that the coronavirus gets its name because of the crown-like protrusions on its outer membrane, and that the protrusions are called spike proteins and actually act like a key? Then when the virus floats around, the character traits of the outer membrane of the virus find cells with like characteristics to then lock onto that cell and use it to replicate itself. How does it lock on and replicate? Well, when the virus's key finds its match and fits perfectly with the lock of the host cell, it welcomes in the virus and, like a working partnership, will allow the virus to use the cell to help it massively replicate. With this understanding, our research led us to find that the COVID-19 coronavirus is prone to lock onto the cells in the lungs of those emitting characteristics of anger, fierceness, and are demanding of others in the need to achieve their own goals. What kind of people is the COVID-19 coronavirus likely to infect? Because the virus cannot see, in order to locate a suitable host cell, it relies on sensing minute electromagnetic frequencies being emitted from nearby life forms that resonate with the electromagnetic frequencies being emitted by the virus's spikes, which have a key-like function, enabling it to complete a key to a lock effect. Upon sensing resonating character traits in the form of electromagnetic frequencies, the COVID-19 coronavirus will invade the cells of the lung and the windpipe. Earlier, we were describing the character traits of the virus as being inherently extreme, greedy, and having a tendency towards dominance to ensure their survival. However, now, we will take a look at what we have found to be the character traits of the cells of susceptible hosts to better understand the resonance between the virus and a person. Our findings are based on 20 years of research that our character traits come from the inherited programs in our cells, which we will discuss and illustrate in much further detail in our longer seminar. Here are the character traits found in the cells of the lungs and windpipe in the hosts. A tendency towards judging things from one's own perspective. Insistent on others accepting the perspective. If the other does not accept the perspective, they can become hostile and aggressive, often unwilling to listen or submit to others, wanting others to oblige. They may even despise others because of this. Self-centered and focused and defending their own interests at all costs. A tendency to not want to help others. Lack of empathy or care for others. In addition, people with these traits would be more prone to having infections and respiratory issues. What is the usual cause of death from the COVID-19 coronavirus? The current outbreak has infected many people around the globe and caused many deaths so far. Did you know that the cause of death is not directly related to the virus itself? In fact, it appears to be because the host's immune system is overly sensitive, and its overreactive response to the virus will cause acute respiratory distress syndrome, also known as ARDS, which in many cases leads to death. So what is ARDS, and how does it affect a person who's infected with the virus? When a person's immune system is too sensitive, not only will the white blood cells attack the virus in the lungs, but this will also trigger a series of issues to occur, resulting in significant reduction of carbon dioxide and oxygen exchange, causing respiratory difficulties. This is the onset of ARDS. Consequently, If there's too much damage to the lungs and not enough oxygen is supplied to the rest of the body, also known as hypoxia, this could then lead to death. From the point of view of our research, people with particularly overreactive immune systems would often have a strong retaliating character and overly protect their own interests. Therefore, when these people become infected with the virus, the body's innate reactive immune response will react much more intensely than needed, even violently, leading to higher chances of having ARDS. What is suggested to prevent being infected by the coronavirus? We would first suggest you to follow the measures implemented by your respective governments and medical community to reduce the exposure to the virus and the possibility of infection. Since the COVID-19 coronavirus has certain characteristics that resonate with certain people's characters, the virus would likely be more attracted to them as hosts. So it seems that it could be relevant to thoroughly understand the characteristics that seem to resonate with the virus, and if we alter our characteristics, to pay attention and to try to adjust these characteristics. By adjusting our mentality, way of doing things, and hoping it may help decrease our chances of infection. Or if we may be infected, it is probable we may have a better chance of recovery. This has been a brief summary of our research into the current pandemic. Please find an invitation below to our upcoming 1.5-hour online seminar titled A Different Look into the Coronavirus and How It May Be a Catalyst for Change. Dear friends, in light of the current pandemic, our Institute's researchers have done an in-depth examination into the coronavirus. The study goes beyond the physical as we also investigate the relationship between consciousness, energy, and matter. Our hope in sharing these findings, combined with medical findings, is that it can give you a greater awareness and understanding of what this virus represents in terms of your own need to adapt and change, as we will all go through these challenging times. Thank you from the PICER Institute.